Last year, Dan Kaminsky discovered a major flaw in Secure Sockets Layer, or SSL, which is used to protect websites. He said criminals could use weaknesses in Domain Naming System, or DNS, to redirect you to fake websites or to hack into the password recovery system. Dan Kaminsky spoke with IDG News Services' Nick Barber.
And there are confirmed attacks against these networks. They're not good. They're actually accelerating in pace. It's remarkable we're seeing anything at all. I mean, this is an attack that is effectively written in disappearing ink. The attacker can say, I want to take this name for the next 45 seconds. And after 45 seconds, I want all evidence that I was ever here to destroy itself. So that we're seeing anything at all, let alone that we're seeing confirmed poisoning events on 1 to 3% of the remaining population is troubling.
Bluecat Networks is a Toronto company that makes IP address management and DNS products. Branko Miskov is the company's director of product management. He explains how the DNS problem can affect a mid to large-sized company.
A lot of customers with good DNS architecture and practices can actually mitigate themselves against attacks like these, which I think is something that a lot of organizations haven't taken into consideration. I mean, typically when you're looking at the Kaminsky vulnerability or the cache poisoning attacks in general, they're very much related to enabling recursive DNS for public servers.
He explained the difference between authoritative and recursive DNS queries.
So typically when you have public-facing DNS servers that are hosting records for, say, bluecatnetworks.com or apple.com or things of that nature, normally those servers are only hosting authoritative DNS. So if someone comes in, makes a request is replied to. In some cases, customers who don't have the know-how or sort of the expertise in-house may have enabled things like recursive DNS queries, which is typically how you get DNS results asking internally for something that you don't own. For example, if I type in Google, www.google.com into my laptop, that'll go to a DNS server here internally, and we'll make a recursive request to go out to the internet.
Miskov gives his take on DNS security.
With respect to DNSSEC, there's a very small number of domains that are actually using DNSSEC. Essentially what it is the ability to validate that a request is coming from who it says it is. So the idea is that when you are hosting your DNS, you have the ability to use a key, public-private key encryption, to essentially sign all of your DNS records. So when someone requests a record from you, they can actually use your public key. Because the record's been signed with your private key, they can use your public key to validate whether or not that record is actually yours or whether or not someone has spoofed it.
Kaminsky says DNSSEC is not a panacea.
DNSSEC is not something I'm a long-term supporter of. I'm very new to it. No one is more surprised than I am that it's actually a pretty good idea. There are operational considerations that have caused a lot of IT people to dismiss it. And they're not wrong, because the operational layout of how you were supposed to deploy DNSSEC is a mess. It's just how it is, it's the honest truth. But I think we can fix it. I think the protocol at its core is actually not bad. We're going to need to do some work on implementations to front load all the really hard parts.
Jayanth Angle is a senior analyst with the Infotech Research Group. Here's what he says companies should do.
Well, the problem that we see in many organizations is that the accountability for DNS is not always clear. So there's really 3 recommendations when it comes to DNS security. Number 1, that IT leaders need to know who exactly is accountable and really define the accountabilities for maintaining DNS, managing security, and addressing any vulnerabilities. Number 2 would be that when new updates are released, when new patches are released for their DNS configurations, that they are applied immediately. With so many mission-critical services and applications relying on DNS, it's something that can't be taken lightly. And the third would be that when it comes to global fault tolerance and geographical redundancy, certainly it does make sense in many organizations to look at third parties or external providers for secondary DNS services to provide that additional resiliency if there is an issue with the enterprise DNS.
Here's how Kaminsky puts DNSSEC in a wider context.
There were 4 major infrastructure flaws found last year. Mine, the SNMPv3 flaw, the BGP flaw, and the WPA1 flaw. Like, these things are around. We need to figure out how to, in the real world, harden our endpoints against them. We haven't done that great a job with that, but I think we can do better with DNSSEC.